past 2 years of your debut record this week.
Yes, it's been 2 years since that first album came out. Yeah, it's just crazy how fast time flies. Like last year I did a giant merch sale for that and raised a bunch of money for just like a lot of like Black Lives Matters organizations, and that was a fun thing. Even that feels so far away because being in this pandemic makes everything just feel so much further. But yeah, it's been out for 2 years. It's insane to believe.
When you initially wrote this EP that you've just re-recorded and brought out, what role did writing that in the first place kind of play on the path to your debut record in terms of your progression as an artist?
Right. So when I was writing Some Days, I feel like I was just figuring a lot of things out. Like I was just learning how to record. I was just learning or trying to figure out what I wanted to sound like. So there was a lot of thought going into it. Whereas with this debut album, Time, I wasn't really thinking about what I wanted to sound like at all. Like I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to make songs and just put out an album. And at that point I had kind of found my footing in how to record. I've kind of spent a lot of time songwriting. So it was like a lot more comfort and a little more confidence behind it. So when I was writing it, it was just like, I was just making a lot of different music, a lot of different sounds. And I kind of built this radio concept around the album to kind of help give it more structure, because all the songs alongside each other just felt a little disorganized. So I'm like, you know what, if I put like this thing kind of tethering these songs together, it kind of creates this whole cohesive project rather than it just being a randomly chosen thing. And that really helped give the album more direction. I
guess as well, with the wee skits and stuff you have on it, it allows a different side to your personality to shine through, a more playful side.
Totally, like 100%. Like I'm a big fan of just like, you know, video stuff as well as just like doing dumb things. Just I like to do acting and just like play around. So doing the skits like that, or just like at that point I was like, I'm having fun. I'm enjoying playing music, and I'm fully self-aware at this point that I'm being fully ridiculous. And I thought it was just like a fun thing to add and to really help world build the album a bit more. Be like, these are commercials for the radio thing that you are paying attention to. So yeah, when I look back, I'm like, sometimes it's a little cringy, but like, what can you do?
It reminds me a bit of Midnight Marauders, you know, the Tribe Called Quest album.
Oh yeah, that's interesting because I just recently, it's unfortunate, I got into Quest like last year, and like hearing that album, I was like, whoa, okay, so something was happening here that I fully wasn't paying attention to. But like, it's interesting how the mind works, and like how like they had the idea to do this whole tethered thing, and like I love that. It's cool how inspiration works like that. But I get the vibe for sure.
Did that influence you at all as well when you came back to re-recording the EP? Because what song is it you kind of have a bit of studio bleed comes into the start of it? I think it's maybe Dreams or What You Do or something. It kind of begins with a clip from the studio.
Oh yeah, I think it was Dream. Oh no, What You Do to Me has like that like breath of like, okay. When going back into working on Some Days, I was really just like, you know what, rather than like, because I could have changed, like I had so many new ideas that I could have put on these old songs. But I'm like, you know what, I just want to really honor what they are and not play around with that or not jeopardize them. So for me and for like a mental practice of minimalistic playing, I'm just going to do exactly what I did, but just do it way nicer. Just polish everything off and just make it sound way prettier than what the originals were, and giving it that new sheen of like, here's a fresh coat of paints, and letting the songs breathe was just nice to hear. Because I think for me, I'm really excited to hear my very first project next to my next project and see just how far that growth has kind of happened. So yeah, I really didn't want to do too much to those songs because I didn't want to bring them into where I'm at now. I really wanted to be like, this is set in a time. It's very intentional that these songs are the way they are.
It's almost like Hollywood remaking a film, just kind of bringing in a bit of a bigger budget.
Exactly.
And making it sound a little bit nicer.
Only good when they just honor the last film and not try to really, completely create different parallel stories, because I think what Hollywood doesn't really account for. People form their memories to those films, and when they just like deface them and change them so much to the point where it's like, this is a completely different movie. That's kind of maybe the same philosophy I had around redoing the EP. Like, don't change it too much, just do it again, but nicer.
When you did the initial version, did that have, who is it that's singing on What You Do with you?
That's their name is Vero. They play in the band with me here in Winnipeg. They like do bongos and sing. Yeah, they're like one of my best friends. And yeah, I when we were practicing, I was like, you know what, you should just come add some vocals on here just to kind of give it a little something different, because I was hearing my own voice fatigue. So I was just like, it would be nice to kind of have that as like a nice closer to the regular sets of songs, and it just is such a nice touch to the song, I think.
Yeah, it just gives it a slightly different flavour.
Exactly.
Compared to the initial.
Yeah, totally.
Because you released the EP originally, was it on Bandcamp? Did it make it onto streaming?
It was on Bandcamp and never made it to streaming, and I had it there for a while, and then I took it down maybe last year or the year prior when I was like, you know what, I'm going to redo this. I wanted to get rid of the original just to not have anything to for anyone to really be like, oh yeah. But I've been posting clips of the original songs on Instagrams just so people can kind of get a taste of what they sounded like. I'm like, you don't need the whole thing. There really isn't a whole lot here in terms of like, I wouldn't want anyone to be listening to a whole version of the original What You Do to Me, because yeah, it's not that great to me anyway. So
if you took it down a couple of years ago, is this an idea you've had for a while to come back and redo it?
100%. I think as soon as I was done working on Time, I had like a weird existential crisis moment where it's like, I finished this album that I've been like working on for like 2 or 3 years, and I'm like, am I just a music guy now? Like, do I just make more songs and just do this whole grueling process again? And I was like, I don't know if I can make another album. And I was just like, what do I do? And I kind of had like a moment to just like, you know what, just stop, think for a second. Like, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I was like, you know what? I need to give myself like a win. I need to give myself just like an easy, like just like recording a cover or doing something that like is already built, like pre-baked in, and just like knowing all the steps and recording it and putting it out. That just feels so good and rewarding. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and redo the first album, because at the time in our set, we were playing What You Do to Me, but no one had heard like a recording of it. So I was like, maybe this makes sense to just do it and put it out. And I think going back to working on those songs really helped influence the direction of what would later become the next album to follow. Like when I was working on re-recording the songs, I was just like, oh, you know, there's a theme here that I'd like to kind of really play with a bit more, of like going back and really using that to move forward. I think that whole thing is very intentional, of putting the first thing I've ever done and then like going and looking at the next project I do after this. It's like, really is just kind of like a, almost like a, I don't know, it's almost like a slingshot kind of feel of it. It's just like being pulled back and being launched forward.
What you were saying there as well about how when you wanted to do something that was kind of easy, not easy, but felt creatively satisfying for you.
Yeah.
And was going to be reasonably straightforward. What does that do for your creativity after you've completed it? What is it like when you return to working on new material once you've finished reworking the CP?
Yeah, I think you just kind of feel like, okay, I killed that. You just kind of give yourself that little pep, and you're just like, okay, perfect. I did something that, you know, I knew those steps to, went through the process of recording it. I feel really good about tackling some new ideas. And like, I think at the time I had a few skeletons of songs for new material, but I was like really in my head about it, of just like, I don't know what I wanted it to be, but I think working on some days really kind of gave me a bit more of a direction with like, you know what, the same way that in this time I was just figuring it out, I should just kind of apply that to this as well and not be thinking about what I'm doing and just do the thing. And after that, songs were just kind of happening way easier with less restriction. And I feel like I was at like a good point of just creativity while working on what's going to be the next album. So that was, I think, what I needed at that time.
With what you were saying as well about that slingshot metaphor in terms of using the ideas and the themes you were exploring on that EP to kind of propel you on and explore them again in future, were those themes already present in the music you were working on? It was just a case of fleshing them out, or were new songs constructed in terms of wanting to work some more with those themes?
Right. So I think at the time there were some songs floating around that were just like, I was like kind of like dabbling in. And after some days, like after working on it a bit, because it had to be worked on in 2 sections because the pandemic had locked everything over here. So started working on it in January, and I kind of got that moving back into like working on material again feel. And then we locked down here in March, and then I had like a whole 2 months to just sit at home and not really do anything before we opened up again. So in that time I was like, I feel like I have that creative buzz from working on in the studio. So I'm like, let me really work with that idea of that energy and that same creativity that I had when I was, working on some days. I guess I just really used that to force myself to like really push myself creatively and just do weird things and make different decisions and like completely leave my comfort zone for what I had done prior. I know in the next batch of songs, it's like nothing about it feels comfortable, which is really exciting in a way to be that vulnerable, but like feel good about it. Like, and I think that's been a thing I've been working on just as a life thing. I'm like, I need to work on being more vulnerable. And I think working on an album like this really, it all just helped. It was like a feedback loop of self-care, I think.
Is it easier to be vulnerable in life out with music once you do it in your art?
I think so. I think with like, since music and art is just so personal, like if you can do it and then put it out for people to see, it really is, that is the biggest first step. It's like, as an artist, we're just giant babies and we act like we don't care what people think, but we do the things because we want people to like it. I don't know any artist that's like, I don't want anyone to like me. It's like, unless you're Morrissey or something. It's like you do these things, and then I think you get the feedback, you get the like all the reception, and then you kind of just use that to not, like, to one, build a thicker skin, but to also be comfortable and confident in your decisions, which in turn makes you more of a confident, vulnerable person. It's like, this is me, whether you like it or not. And I'm not going to jeopardize that. So I think it really is useful. And we'll see after this next project comes out if that stands, if I'm not just crumbling under my own words. So we'll see.
That's an interesting juxtaposition you were kind of mentioning there, this idea of being confident in your vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel conviction and confidence or self-doubt fuels your music more or plays a bigger role in your creativity? That's
such a good question. I think self-doubt honestly forces a level of confidence where like it's such a weird, like, everything just connected type thing where it's just like, as soon as I have that moment of, oh, I shouldn't do this, it's like, why does that come up? It's because I'm scared, or like I think it's going too far, or it's like something like completely leaving my comfort. So like, as soon as I feel that self-doubt, pushing through it is like pushing a lot of creativity and a lot of vulnerability out. It's just like this, when I'm done, and like, especially if I get it to a point, like the project to a point where I'm like, I'm happy with it, it's like, that is just so rewarding to be like, whoa, I didn't think it could get to this point. And to hear it and see it is just like, I'm just proud. Like, it's a moment of being proud of yourself, and it's just a moment of celebrating yourself. And it's like, okay, and now I'm excited to show this off to people. And I can talk about, I didn't think this is the thing I could do, but here it is, and I'm happy I did it.
Do you get a little bit of an adrenaline rush from that?
Sometimes, yeah.
Being out of your comfort zone.
I think, for me, I really thrive from being out of my comfort zone for a while. And that's something I really worked on in my youth, of just like, I was a huge introvert, and I still very much am introverted. But like at the time, I was like to the point where it's like, I wasn't really good at having conversation. I wasn't good at putting myself out there. So I worked at a job where I was forced to be out there, and I was forced to have to communicate. And being in that position, I felt like I was actually growing. Like I was like, oh, I'm working out of the things that are holding me back. Like I'm being forced to have to communicate more, to have to really socialize. And I think that was really useful. So like as soon as I feel that feeling in music or any kind of anywhere, anything in life, it's like, this is an area in which I can grow in because I'm very uncomfortable in it. And I want to grow. I'm a person that constantly feels like I'm progressing in life and not feel too stagnant. So I think that it's not less about adrenaline, but it's less about like a desire to never slow down. While, like comfort for me is just like stability in self. Like I don't look for it elsewhere because life is always changing. And I think this pandemic has really shown that nothing is set in stone. Nothing is for sure. So it's like, you know what, if I'm comfortable with myself, all this doesn't matter. It really is. I'm chilling at all points. I'm like constantly just vibing and doing whatever I got to do in a moment. Once
you became comfortable in yourself, did you see a shift in the way you expressed yourself in your music at all?
I think the self-doubt part of it didn't become self-doubt, but just that part of it changed. So it's like I wasn't doubting myself nearly as much, but I was like, it became very conversational internally. Like, what are areas? Like, what do you want to really try to pull from here? Like, I've gotten a lot of comments on how I like mix vocals deeper in like the music. So people are like, I can barely hear you sing, and I'm like, I know, I did that on purpose. So I'm like, you know what? Push the vocals, like make them a little louder, put them kind of closer to the front, and it's like be confident behind that decision while being a little vulnerable and like let your words shine through. Like I spent a lot of time working on lyrics this time around. Or I think I'm still talking about. For some days, since there were so many lyrics that time around, I really looked at it as a focus of like, man, I was like writing some really vulnerable stuff. And I that was another thing I guess I took from working back on some days where like the lyricism on that EP was like, it was sad boy stuff, but it was just like very, very like I knew exactly what I was talking about as I was reading.
A little bit of teenage angst about
it. Exactly. So I was like reading through these I mentioned that it felt like an old journal entry. So like I was reading through the words and being like, I know exactly what I was feeling. And I think that is such a cool thing to like look back and see. So I was like, I need to really focus on lyricism again, because for so long I was like really just trying to do the cool thing musically. So I was like, you know what, let's redirect the focus to really pushing the words and like really trying to convey exactly what I'm trying to say and being confident and comfortable enough of being like, here it is, like kind of pushing it to the forefront of where people are listening. So yeah, I've totally gone on a tangent and lost where but yeah.
How old were you when you wrote the EP?
I think 2021, maybe 22, 21, 22, I think. Yes.
It's interesting what you were saying about how it's almost like reading through old journal entries. Mm-hmm. If you think about something like the chorus for Some Days, where you have those questions like, what do you do when you're past half done? When you're not really sure if your life's begun. Can you see more directly where that relates to your life now that you're further on from it?
Totally. Like, I think at that time, and it's interesting, like anyone I've talked to at that age, I was when I wrote that song, has that same feeling of like, like when you're like, I don't know, is the schooling system the same in the UK as it is over here, where it's like after grade 12, you just kind of go into college or you go into life?
How old are you at that point?
I guess you'd be around 21, 22.
No, you leave a lot later. I left school at 17.
Really? Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
we can leave from 16, but
wait, hold on.
Kind of between 16 and 18.
Oh, wow. Y'all leave a lot earlier than we do. Like, I think everyone leaving high school is around 20 years old, or it differs for a lot of different people. But at that time of like making a decision of like, do I go to school? Like everyone feels like they need to leave their hometown, or everyone feels like they need to go into a job. It's like, there's so many decisions. And like, by the time you're done high school, up to that point, you're just constantly being asked what you want to do. And like, you don't know because you literally had so much of your life be delegated to you. And then you have you're pretty much free to do what you want, and it's just so much confusion. And I had such a horrible time in high school. I was like held back. I got kicked out. I went to like adult ed to like finish high school.
Why'd you get kicked out?
I just skipped class a bunch. I hate school. I hated school at the time. You can hear my angst. Like I was just cutting class and like going to the skate park and going to the music room and just being a bad kid. Not doing bad stuff, but just not doing school stuff.
I feel like it must be harder to kick people out over here. Because that was kind of the norm for a lot of people when I was at school, and nobody got kicked out.
Oh, see, well, I got kicked out, and I don't know, like, to this day, I'm like, I mean, there were literally drug dealers at our school, and I got kicked out. So I'm like, maybe they just didn't like me. Like, honestly, like, I was kind of a witty asshole back in the day, so I don't blame them for getting rid of me. At the same time, it is what
it's a defense mechanism when you're that age.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I was just like, and to this day, like I see I'm just like a natural rebel. Like as soon as I hear you can't do this, you can't do this, I'm like, we'll see about that. So I'm just like always like breaking rules, like just like talking back. And I was always that you're smart but lazy kid. I'm like, it's not smart and lazy. I just don't want to do it like at all. Like I hated it so much. And yeah, school was just never it for me. But now I'm older. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I was the problem. Maybe school wasn't the problem. I was the problem. But I also realize how I learn is maybe not how school wants to teach you. Or it's like very much sitting in a room, listening to a person and writing down. I learn very conversationally. I'm hands-on through visual and just through experience. Like I've learned so much just doing rather than just being kind of told a way of doing something. Which is not really how school works sometimes.
Yeah, not everyone wants that kind of structured learning. You want to explore a little bit more.
Exactly. And I learned that at a young age, and I think I've always had a hard time with school because of that. Like I see everyone else learning and excelling this way, and like school systems will tell you that you're wrong, and what you're learning is how you're learning is wrong. And like hearing that at such a young age and being like, I'm something wrong with me, I'm stupid, or it's like, I don't think I'm stupid. I don't think I'm stupid. Like this makes sense. It's just like I can't apply it. Like sure, calculus on paper when you're being told how to do it, this makes sense. But in the world, does it make sense? Like, do I need calculus in my day-to-day life? No. But I could see where and how it's useful. Yeah, I really like to learn stuff that's just practical and not like all the extra stuff that school kind of presents to you. It's like, I'm never going to really need some of the things I learned in school, but they're nice to learn about. Sure. History, social sciences and all that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of wasted time when you're in school.
A lot of wasted time. And not that my time was precious to me at that point, but like, there was a lot more distraction. Like, like trying to make friends, trying to meet people, just trying to live life and trying to figure out who the hell I wanted to be and what the hell I wanted to do on my own.
Do you think that was more productive for you in the long run though? Like going to the music room or socializing with people and learning those skills?
Yeah, because I that was an area I needed to grow in once again. I was just like, I knew I wanted to play music. I didn't know to what extent, but then as soon as I found a deep love for it, I think, being the angsty, troubled kid I was, I found it was a form of escapism. So I was like doing it as much as possible and trying to understand what I was getting from it. I didn't realize how therapeutic music was for me at that time. And then, like, I wrote some horrible songs in high school. Like, I was learning how to pretty much songwrite and play an instrument. But, like, I spent so much time doing it that I was like, oh, I can get good at this if I just give it way more time. And I think school's cutting into that time. So I was just, like, cutting class and going and doing it. And just, like, yeah, I had a really cool guitar teacher at the time. He's like, why aren't you in class? I'm like, I don't want to be there. He's like, well, he'd much rather I be in the guitar room than be out of school entirely. He's like, I'm not going to say it's okay that you're cutting class, but I'd much rather you be here than out there. So do whatever you want to do. There's some guitars over there, whatever. I don't see it. I don't hear it. I'm like, okay, cool.
Have you ever had a teacher that you've devoted yourself to?
My guitar teacher, I really, my guitar teacher as well as my choir teacher, they were both like, there were classrooms right next to each other. So like, they were both really, really supportive and being like, you get to kind of pick and choose your way of life. So if this is something you really like, give it a chance and really push yourself in it. But like, you shouldn't throw away like your schooling. It's like, schooling is something that you can kind of like, after I got kicked out of high school, I was like, okay, I want to finish high school. Like, I don't want to just be a high school dropout. So making the choice to go, because there was like a program here in Winnipeg called adult education, which is essentially high school, but with university level classes. So it's way harder, and like they have less restriction on it. It's like you get to pick and choose. And I think making the choice to want to learn and do good, want to like actually, like, that felt way better than the structure of where are you going in school. It's like I wasn't allowed to wear a hat in high school, but as soon as I went to adult ed, I was allowed to just wear a hat. I'm like, oh, this feels good. It's like that little tiny stupid thing. I'm just like, why can't I wear a hat? It's so dumb. So yeah, making the choice to kind of want to learn was a really cool thing. And I did well in adult ed, and I realized, I'm like, oh, I do know what the hell I'm being told. It's just like, I'm just such a fucking asshole. Some part of my language. I'm just such a shithead sometimes, where I'm just like, no, I don't want to do what you like. I'm just like, like, I look back at that kid. It's just hilarious. It's like, smarten up, man. Smarten up.
That's also why I find it really strange that you leave high school, in Canada at like 20, because when you're in high school, you're still treated like a child.
Yeah.
By the time you're 20, you're not a child anymore.
You know what? Maybe it was 20 for me, because I was held back. I was given, I'm like, you know what? I said
even 18 though. It's interesting.
It's, that's a really great point. And I think that's exactly it. You're still a kid and you're being launched into the world. Like, all right, but like, a lot of people out of high school already have this preconceived notion that they need to go into post-secondary. Like, all right, after high school, I got to go to university or I got to go to college, but they have no idea what for. Like, I think a lot of like high school, and the high school I went to offered a lot of different classes. Like, we had an automotive class. It was like a vocational class, like a vocational high school. So there was just so many different things. And like, that was one thing I really took from high school, where it's like, you know what? I'm going to explore, like, whereas everyone was like going through like the standard, I'm going through these things. I was constantly changing my classes. I was like, hey, I want to go try this. Hey, I want to go try wood shop. Hey, I want to go try electronics. Hey, I want to go try auto. I want to go try drama. They're like, why are you changing your classes? I'm like, I'm just trying to find something. I really don't know what I like yet. And I'm just trying to find the thing that really makes me want to work hard for this shit. So, changing classes was like a way to just explore the different things I was into. And I think very quickly I was like, I like working with my hands. I like kind of working in areas that I can just explore my own way. I pretty much just pivoted the way I like to learn and just found the things that kind of provide that type of learning, while still going to like all the English, math, and science. And yeah, like I love English. I love science. Don't like math. I'm not good at math, but
nobody likes math.
No one likes math.
I don't trust people who like math.
My partner loves math, and I'm like, that's just something that weirds me out all the time. Yeah, I gotta get out of this relationship. Thanks for that. Red flag if you like math. I like that. But yeah, like, I'm not a big math person, but I like science. I like English, and that was fun. I didn't mind it. It's so weird talking about high school. I just never do it anymore.
Yeah, it is funny to look back. It's interesting as well, because I think it was in the liner notes, or it was somewhere you mentioned that some days in life you feel like a doer, and other days you feel like an observer. Which did you feel more like in high school?
I think in high school, I didn't even realize I had those two, like, it was just like one thing at that point. Like, I was observing while doing and not really paying attention to what I was doing, but I was doing the things. But the second I kind of split the brain a bit, which is maybe where I could have been a more effective learner, like observe, then do. Observe, then do. I was always just like, this isn't happening fast enough. I should be doing. So as I'm listening, I want to be doing something. And that just makes me so fidgety. Like, I have a hard time listening to a person talk for a super long time, especially if they weren't like, I had great teachers. Like, I had great teachers that were really engaging and really fun and really like charming and funny. But like, I had a lot of teachers that were just like, reading the script in their brain and spewing it out. And like, you're trying to get me engaged. Like I had horrible.
They don't want to be there either.
Exactly. It's like, how the hell are you going to convince a room full of kids to be here? Well, it worked. I mean, I didn't want to be there, and I was very much like, I'm out of here. I'm fucking cutting class or whatever. Yeah, I think in high school I was like this weird middle of both, and it took me a long time to realize I need to observe, then do. I need to observe, then do. I need to observe, then do. And I'm still figuring out that balance, because all too often I observe a lot of things and want to do a lot of things all at the same time. Like, that's not effective. I got to hone in on what I really want to take in, and then I got to hone in on really what I want to do. So that's growth. When I hear myself talking about that, it's like, damn, figured it out. This is therapy right here. Dang, thank you, Alex.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, what have you observed recently that you've kind of grown from and used?
I think tracking my behaviors and like knowing how I get in certain moments and knowing what I need in times. Like when I feel stressed, what are some things I notice about when I feel stressed? I don't eat a lot, or I get very like quiet, and I'm like, what I need to do in those times is I need to communicate better. I need to be more active. I need to make sure I get enough sleep, get enough water, and just be more hyper aware internally of like my body's alarm systems, and just like getting more in touch with myself. So that's been a thing recently, maybe within the last 3 years of just like really figuring out myself. And because like, it's so funny, like observation is such an external thing, but like I didn't even realize I can observe internally. Like, oh, where are my thoughts going? Oh, what's my body telling me I need or want right now? And then doing those things and being like internally rewarded from it. It's like, my posture is better now. Oh, I have more energy. Oh, I feel like I have more creativity. My focus is better. It's like your body is pretty much giving you things when you give it what it needs and wants. And it's like, I'll take that. So having a better relationship with myself, I think, has been what I've been working on.
That idea you mentioned there, of the give and take.
Mm-hmm.
How often does the amount of effort and energy that you give to a song when you're creating it feel like a fair transaction from what you get back from making that song?
I think what I've learned is with music, it doesn't all need to happen all at once. For so long, I thought, I'm giving it my all like in an hour. I'm not getting anything back. It's like, well, maybe a song doesn't take an hour to write. It's like you give it your all, you breathe. You give it your all, you breathe. And eventually what you get from doing that little by little, when you have the energy to give, is something that, has all that energy stored in it. Like, I think that was a large part of working on new material, was like, when I had energy, I was throwing it right into writing and into making new songs. When I didn't have energy, I wasn't forcing it. Like, I wasn't like trying to do a thing, because I was giving it nothing and getting nothing back. And I felt like this is a waste of time. This is just like shitty. Giving it the energy when I felt good and excited makes me, I think what's come from it is like looking at this new batch of songs, I'm just like, whoa, I'm really proud and really excited about this, which is, I'm just super stoked to. I love talking about Some Days, but for me, I feels like I've been talking about Some Days for years. So like, it's new to everybody but me. So I'm like, I'm excited for everyone being excited. That feels really rewarding and great. But like, I'm so excited for the next thing, because we'll all be experiencing it at the same time. It won't be like I have a 5-year head start for this thing, and so it's new to everyone. And I'm like, I want to keep that enthusiasm and excitement. I'm very excited about what's next, and I'm very excited about Some Days and just the reception of just like people enjoying it. Because in my mind, like since it has been 5 years since I put that out, I was like, oh, no one's going to care about this. It's not new to it's new to everybody but me. So that was something I really had to get out of the way for, and be like, let everyone have their experience with this thing, and you don't have to be giving them an experience about it. So it's been super nice to just hear everyone talk about it and have a good time with it.
Are you so excited about the new stuff as well? Because you were just in the studio, right? Like a couple of weeks ago.
I've been chipping away at this next project for, it seems like I'm figuring out that I think I need like 2 years to make a good album, a good album. I don't know what I could do in a year. Like I would definitely try, but like, yeah, I've been working on these songs since like end of 2019. And I've been slowly putting together a package of songs that I'm just like feeling really good about. And being in the studio, tidying them up and getting them to a good place and continuing to work on them. Like the two engineers I've been working with, Arthur and Will, we've been talking about this thing for like years now. I'm like, okay, this is what I kind of want it to be. At the time, it wasn't like a thing. Like I couldn't really show them what I had been working on. But when I had the collection of songs that I wanted to make another album, they're like, oh yeah, we get this immediately. And we've just been, it's been nice to not have it just because for the last like for time, it was just such a personal thing of me just sitting and festering and just going through it on my own. But talking it through with people and like getting the song to, because I don't have a lot of equipment. Like I don't have a very minimal setup at home, so I need to kind of go places to work. And it's almost nice to have that, to have a home studio. I feel like it'd be really useful for the creation stage, but like I don't want to like do all the final touches or anything from home. I think it's almost better to move it somewhere else to get it to that next place. So having a place to work and having people to talk about ideas with has been really, really good for me, because I see where the songs were and I just see how much they're growing and like changing. And I'm like, this is amazing, man. It's just so much fun. And like, I'm becoming more and more excited every time I take from it.
I think as well, when you're having conversations with people in that way, you need to have a full understanding of the music itself and a very clear understanding in order to communicate that to them, which then gives a clear idea of what you want yourself.
Exactly. I think when I hear myself, and that's going back to like observing and doing, like I'll talk to people and it'll be a conversation. I'm observing what I'm saying and I'm hearing what they're saying. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's do that. Like the things that really connect. It's like applying it immediately and being like, I didn't think of that. Let's go with that. That makes a lot more sense. Or that conversation is just such a useful tool when it comes to creativity, because when I'm sitting at home, just doing it myself, that's just not happening. As much as I can talk internally about, oh, I should try this, I could do this, having a good feedback and like give this a try or do this, it's like, oh, that makes way more sense. Thank you. That's really useful. Really, really useful.
What was the last conversation you had that changed the way you thought about something?
I learned so much working with Arthur and Will. Like they're good friends and I really trust them with everything. For me, understanding that balance is such an important thing in making music. Like I've been called a maximalist for a lot of what I do. It's just like everything everywhere all the time, but balance is such a good thing, letting moments breathe, letting them flow more. Once I kind of took that and applied it and was able to just like understand like letting music breathe more, I was just like, oh man, I don't know why I didn't know this before. Like I knew it, but I didn't really understand dynamic and balance, and just like seeing it actually be applied. Like doing less is actually doing more in some areas, whereas doing more is sometimes taking away. So it's like learning balance and dynamic and having a constant conversation about that has been really good. And I think even after this next album, like having that in my mind of like work, like the balance and dynamic, whatever I do creatively next, I think that's a really good thing to kind of work with.
Do you agree with people calling you a maximalist?
I still don't fully understand it, but at the same time I do. Like I always try to make things sound full. I always try to get every idea I have out. So maybe to some extent, and I like to work with what I have, and I like to not do too much while still doing the most with the space I have in it. So I guess when I hear myself talk, I'm a bit of a maximalist. So now it's like working back to working in minimalism, but also just finding, once again, the healthy middle, like the balance between the two of them, like giving moments that need to be bigger points, and then taking everything away. So I think working in that balance has been such an interesting thing and such a fun thing for showing growth of, for so long I've been just doing the most, but now it's like I know and understand doing the least is also as potent.
Can you hear the idea of maximalism in the initial Some Days recordings?
I think I think I really started hearing maximalists in time. Some Days for me feels very minimal because at the time it was drums, guitar, bass, vocals, and barely any synth. So it's like, all right, I was just doing the fundamentals, but the parts were busy. So maybe, you know what? Even in that saying that, I guess I was being a maximalist with the bare minimum I had. So damn, full circle. It's like I only have these 3 things, so I got to do the most. And yeah, I guess kind of now when I say it like that, I kind of hear the maximalism come out. But yeah, I think understanding that now I'm being more, damn, I hear it, I see it. Called out.
I mean, when we look back at our past work or our past selves, it's very easy to be self-critical.
Totally.
And kind of pick it apart a little bit. Mm-hmm. Does building something so directly from that original EP, basically just taking it and remaking it almost, does that help you to feel more at peace with your past self?
I
think
it can
so.
Still
be that songs, but you're still proud of them?
Totally, yeah. Like I think that was the nice thing that was really rewarding with going back to Some Days, was feeling like the songs still held up. Like they didn't feel like old crappy recordings. They just felt like, oh, they just need to be dusted off and polished, and like they still very much are. They still work, and I think and hope that they can still be very useful for someone in today, even though they were written like back in 2014. So yeah, I felt really good to see that level of, okay, these still work and they still have the same effects.
Are you able to identify what it is that's still working about them?
I think for me, the guitar playing in them was really, looking back, I was like, I was really at my show off stage of music where I'm like, I want to just show that I can play this instrument or play these instruments. And I think that part for me holds up, where it's like a lot of the biggest compliments and comments I've been getting about it is just like the guitar sounds really good. And I'm like, yeah, I'm really proud about that because, moving forward, I'm like trying to not necessarily move away from the guitar, but change the relationship with the guitar and music. So kind of going back to playing more guitar central music and just more like string based stuff. It felt more raw. And I think that was the thing that was most valuable in working on Some Days again, was just like, being connected to the instrument, that like the parts are super detailed, and like it pushes me out of my comfort again to be like, oh, I've been getting lazy on guitar, or like, cause like at that time that was easy. So that's an area I think it really shines through for me, for sure. Like just the instrumentation and the lyricism. Holds up really well.
Did you think when you wrote those songs back in 2014, 2015 that you would still relate to them kind of 5-6 years on?
No, truth be told, like when I wrote them back then, I didn't think really anything of them, because at the time this project wasn't really what it is. Like, without saying, it was not what it was now, but like my relationship with the music and my growing relationship with what I was going to do just wasn't there. I think I was very naive. I think I just wanted to do a thing, not really thinking or caring about what happened with it. Like I have all these songs in me, I just want to record them, put them out, and whatever, So I didn't really think much of it. And now looking back, it's a really cool thing to see that whole, I wasn't thinking much of it, but now to kind of see where it is now and give it a new life is just, it really is rewarding in that sense of just like honoring that past time and all that past work, and just celebrating that version of myself, and seeing how it still works today and what it's doing for me moving forward is really, really, really awesome.
Do you feel like you'll relate to the songs that you're writing today in 5 years' time? I
think the songs I'm writing today, yeah, I think so. I think what I'm working on, or what I've been working on post some days has been something that it feels like a big chapter of life encapsulated in this, like the next album. So I think looking back at it, I'll see all that whole flow of where I was and where I'm at. And that's the nicest thing with looking at any previous music project. It's like anytime I hear or look back at what I've done, it's like I see where I was at that time. So having this whole kind of moment of time encapsulated in an album and like looking back at that is so valuable. So I think there's a lot in it that in 5 years I'll be able to take from, be really stoked about overcoming or, persevering through and all that stuff. So I'm very excited about that.